The standard of economic and social justice is woven into the warp and weft of the entire biblical tradition. The heart of this witness calls us to observe what, throughout this presentation, we're going to call Sabbath economics. At its root, Sabbath economics is about gift and about grace. It's about the grace of receiving that which the Creator gives freely to all, and the responsibility not to take too much or to mistake the gift as a possession. The theology of Sabbath economics and its ethic of regular and systemic wealth and power redistribution, clearly summed up, as we'll see, in the Jubilee ethos of debt forgiveness and the return of lands to the homeless and the release of slaves. This is neither utopian nor abstract. It is a very concrete ethos, way of life, which arose from the historic experience of Hebrew slavery in Egypt. And so it seeks to be both corrective but also preventative. I believe that this ethos continues to offer communities of faith today a way out of some of the worst dysfunctional behavior in our contemporary economy. And that's what this project is all about. The word from which our term economics comes from is the Greek term oikonomia. Now, oikonomia means simply the management of the household. It is how folk deal day to day with their labor, their production, their consumption. So economics means nothing less than how we handle our money, our work. That's probably more familiar, but what does that have to do with Sabbath? Sabbath means, in the biblical tradition, the recentering of human life on being rather than doing. Now that's hugely important in a culture like ours, where most of us get our identity from what we do, from the job we have, from the money we spend, from the stuff we buy, from the way that we change the world. We are compulsive doers in American society. And when we stop, we become confused about who we are. That's people who follow the money and move where the jobs are because we don't really have a sense of community that's not centered around our work life. But Sabbath suggests that who we really are is who we are when we stop doing, who we are before God, aside from our production, aside from our consumption. And that leads to the second principle of Sabbath in the Bible, and that is that the Sabbath tradition attempts to set very concrete limits on human activity. Now, we in Christian culture have a fairly pejorative attitude toward that. We think of the Sabbath laws as sort of curious and rather niggling prohibitions of little things that one shouldn't do. And that's the reason why that tradition has almost entirely atrophied now in the modern Christian church. In fact, we live in an economic culture where we can now produce 24/7. That's what laptops and cell phones are all about. We can work all the time, at home, at the office, in the car. We're working constantly. And we can consume 24/7. That's the beauty of online shopping. At 2 a.m., you can go online and purchase something. There are no limits of time and space in the frenetic, productive activities. Sabbath is about a culture that tries to constrain all of that, as if there's some ancient wisdom in the Hebrew Bible that knew of this human tendency to be compulsive about our work, compulsive about how we exploit the earth, compulsive about how we consume. Well, that would stand to reason because the biblical story comes not from a European conquest of a new world. The Biblical story comes from the fundamental fact of a story of being on the bottom of an economic pyramid, literally. The Hebrews were slaves in Egypt. And so this is a perspective on economics that comes from people who know the business end of a dysfunctional, oppressive economic story.